Here I would like to start maybe officially our next fifth actually webinar, organized in the framework of our project NGO Community Building International Bridges, which is supported with by International Vysheka Fund. And this is my very great pleasure today to introduce our Czech partner, Dr. Bruce Gahir from Prague City University, who is educated in London, but right now he is working as he's associate dean in the School of Business of Prague City University, and he's also a principal lecturer there. And he will talk today about developing an effective business strategy for NGO during a crisis, which is a subject very important. So, Bruce, we are all ears. The floor is yours, and just we will be with you for the next 3 hours now. So, please.
Thank you. Yep. Thank you so much for the introduction, Agnieszka. I think you can all hear me. If you don't, just let me know. Thank you everybody for organizing this and everybody who's played a part in bringing this whole event and all the different kinds of presentations and seminars that have been taking place. So I think it's an absolutely great initiative, especially from the point of view of NGOs. So the talk today, like Agnieszka has said, will be focusing on developing effective business strategies for NGOs during a crisis. And I will just share my screen. The main part of the talk is going to be focusing on this area here. The idea is that after we cover the first kind of 3 bullet points, we'll have a 15-minute break, and then we look at the second 3 parts. The first 3 parts are kind of roughly built into types of crises which have occurred throughout the EU/Visegrad region, the impact of the crisis on NGOs, and the examples of NGOs' actions to responding to these crises. Some very interesting examples there, particularly during the different crises that have occurred. Then the second part is really talking about the challenges and opportunities that can arise. As you know and have experienced, I'm sure, that crises are sometimes, or most often actually, looked at as an opportunity for innovation. From a crisis point of view, there's very little choice, right? To weather the storm of a crisis and emerge stronger is more kind of impactful from the point of view of developing long-term strategies, especially for NGOs. And NGOs are not short of crises that they've experienced throughout in the region. So building resilience in the long term, and then key strategic approaches for NGOs during a crisis. And I hope that the takeaways will help people in some way to think about what they have experienced and what kind of strategies they have utilized in facing those challenges, and maybe to rethink that if something similar happens again, some of the ideas being presented here today can be brought into developing and coping with these strategies. So if we look at the landscape, you know that, I mean, the world that we live in, especially at the moment, I think since after COVID, is full of unforeseen circumstances and risks. Like crises come in all kinds of shapes and sizes, from natural disasters to human-made conflicts, as we know, that are happening currently. So these events disrupt, to some extent, in quite a drastic manner, from a humanitarian perspective, the status quo, straining resources, and creating new challenges for NGOs on the ground and on the front line. However, I think that amidst the chaos, opportunity exists for NGOs. By planning effectively, NGOs can not only survive during a crisis, but emerge stronger and more impactful by learning from many of these crises that have taken place. So you've got, crisis can be, as I said, many different types, and effective planning, I think, is crucial to ensure continued service delivery during these times when such crises take place. So here are some of the crises that have arisen or the region has experienced, particularly Visakhapatnam region. So we can go back, to the 2002 floods. Despite the progress that has taken place in EU economic progress and all different kinds of progress, the crisis, 2002 Central European floods crisis, did have a great impact. Then you have the 2015 refugee crisis, then the COVID, the rise of populism and anti-migrant sentiment has created all kinds of cross-cultural pressures and sentiments and disharmony there. The war in Ukraine, the continuing environmental challenge. So here are some, of the challenges which we can look at. For example, if we look at the 2002 Central Europe was hit by severe floods that caused widespread damage and displacement. The Visakhapatnam region was not spared at all. NGOs stepped up to providing emergency relief, such as flood shelters, medical aid to those affected. They also played a crucial role, vital role in long-term reconstruction efforts, later on helping communities rebuild their lives and so on. And this all requires great coordination, collaboration, and building different kinds of channels from the point of view of action that is coordinated well to meet the needs of people in desperate situations. So here you can see some of the losses. For example, from a financial perspective, the graph shows some of the losses that took place in Europe from major flood disasters. You can see that the 2002 was the highest one. So from a financial perspective, this cost burden is prevalent in the kind of environment where NGOs have to operate and provide all kinds of emergency relief. Right? There is always this question of cost on the background as well. So, how much can one use? And especially the other thing is that when you have these emergencies taking place, the funding doesn't arise immediately, right? There's a time lag. So you have the event, then you have emergency relief to respond to that event immediately. However, the funding for these emergency reliefs, these actions do not take place immediately. There's always a time lag. And I think for NGOs, there is always this question then of where, do they get the funding from immediately to respond to relief and medical aid for those who are affected. So this is quite a challenge. It's a question I would like to ask here from some of the members of the audience who are working in NGOs. The question I would like to ask and have your kind of feedback here is, do you think that this has been a challenge in some of the emergency relief responses that maybe you have provided in your NGOs, where you have to act immediately? However, the funding for that comes later on. Have you found this challenge? Has anybody?
Yes, I can speak from our experience and what I said at the beginning of this meeting, that the Vicegrad Fund was our first fund supplier, if I may use that word. We initiated response to the refugee crisis in 22 at the beginning of March, and at the time we really didn't have any funds. The CEO made the decision to move one employee who herself was a refugee from 2014 from the eastern parts of Ukraine, and she had the ability and the language as well to help refugees coming into our city. So at that time, I was actively looking for different funds where we can secure those, and there wasn't really any. And then the Vicegrad for Ukraine program came on from the Vicegrad Fund, and it was on a role basis. So it was open call, and whoever first applied and received funds, then they could act. And that was and after 2 months of looking for the funds, the Vicegrad helped us to secure the financing for sustainable future. So after 2 months of looking and searching, we were able to secure those funds. But the first 2 months, we had to finance the response ourselves, and that was challenging. So yes, the funds come later, which is probably always the case.
Yes, yes. So thank you for that input, Marit. So the challenge, as you can imagine here, is from personal experience. There is definitely a challenge during that gap period, right? Where, in fact, your most effective emergency relief or emergency actions to meet the needs of people have to be put into action immediately, because that is when it is most needed, and then you are looking desperately for funds during that time as well. So here, there is something here to think about, the accessibility and I think the use of new technologies, which can sometimes maybe assist in this. This is what I will suggest later on as one strategy to overcome this hurdle of immediate availability of funds. Stefano, you have your hand up as well.
Yeah, sorry. I just want to add a bit to what was said before. Like, probably is the kind of approach of the economists, more the economists. We're talking my seminar in a couple of weeks from now, but essentially, normally NGOs are a response to a social need and a social demand. Most of them, they act not for financial purposes. It's not like a sort of, let's say, classic type of business where actually you have financial means and purpose and goals, right? So it's mostly based on a group of individuals that share certain kind of values, ethical values, and they respond. It's a human response to a social need, to a social difficulties, and so on. Therefore, the normal kind of discrepancy between the capital available and the actual need for the action is normally in place because of their kind of, if you want, economic nature itself. That's what actually is one of the main problems I would like to address when we talk about the economics of strategy related to NGOs. Maybe it's the time to rethink them, or being able to anticipate, strategically speaking, to anticipate what might come after so they can be prepared and not always being just on the response side. This is part of the normally what in strategy we call, Bruce, that like we teach this regularly, is the kind of like the core competencies, right? So developing core competencies and inner knowledge in order to anticipate the future kind of social demand. It is always a strategy which is generally responsive, right? So it's a response to something. And this normally creates a shortage of capital, economically speaking, and the need for looking for capital in order to continue and make it sustainable. which is probably like one of the major issues you have with NGOs currently now, is always a responsive strategy. And from an economic point of view is, as you all know, is actually very difficult. You're looking for funding constantly, and it's very difficult to kind of, sometimes raise funds. I know plenty of NGOs, even in my experience in Italy, where actually the members of the NGOs, they put their own capital actually to keep it going on because of lack of funding.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for that input. So clearly here you can see that there is an issue here from that point. So we can move on, say the 2015 refugee crisis, the Syrian war, civil war starting 2011 led to a massive refugee crisis here. Many refugees sought asylum in Europe during that time, including countries in the Visegrad region. So NGOs here played a crucial role in assisting refugees, providing essential services like language training, legal aid, support with integration. However, some NGOs face criticism from their role in the crisis, with some governments accusing them of encouraging immigration. So when this support, so here is another kind of issue or a hurdle which NGOs are facing from the point of view of social response. If I'll just leave it as a question for the time being, that if NGOs play a crucial role in assisting refugees, providing essential services like, for example, language training, legal aid, and support with integration, for some governments or groups, this can be seen as the NGOs being accused of encouraging immigration. So, how far do you go here? So this is also, I think, another thing to take in mind when developing different strategic responses during a crisis. The COVID-19 pandemic, here you can see that also there were presented a unique set of challenges for NGOs in the Visegrad region. Social distancing measures disrupted traditional service delivery, forcing NGOs to adapt. Many organizations switched to providing food and hygiene kits, supporting remote learning initiatives for children, and raising awareness about public health measures and so on. So these efforts ensured that vulnerable populations continue to receive essential support during a difficult time. And there were quite a number of NGOs involved in this area. Here you can see I have a link here if you want to look at it further. The impact of COVID-19 on European non-governmental sector. Interesting areas being discussed here relating to this particular crisis. The rise of populism has been another issue. In the Visegrad region, these have faced several challenges in recent years. The rise of populist governments, for example, in some Visegrad countries has presented a significant challenge for NGOs and how far they can operate. So these governments often hold anti-migrant sentiments and view some NGOs with suspicion. So they may accuse NGOs of being foreign agents even as far, or undermining national identity or security. So as a result, NGOs have faced increasing scrutiny and restrictions on their activities and difficulties obtaining funding in certain regions. So these are different kind of challenges arising internally due to, political areas and so on. Then you have this one, which is ongoing, right? The ongoing war in Ukraine has created a devastating impact on the region. Millions of refugees have fled Ukraine, seeking safety in neighboring countries, we know, including those in the Visegrad region. NGOs have been at the forefront of humanitarian response here. In fact, some of the examples, which I will take later on, you will see are related to this particular crisis. providing essential support for refugees. However, the sheer scale of the crisis has strained resources, highlighting the need for strong regional cooperation among NGOs to ensure effective aid of delivery. And not kind of also this, I will talk about collaboration later on and coordination efforts so that and communication, the 3 C's I call them. These are essential, I think, so that people don't end up reinventing the wheel, right? So they are utilizing areas of action or the way things have been done due to what others are doing, so that the response becomes effective. Here you can see a link which takes you to EU solidarity with Ukraine. Here you can see some of the figures. For example, over 143 million provided or committed by EU and its member states. Some of the financial and economic support. The EU NGOs particularly have played a major role in food security for a lot of these refugees who came over, particularly in the beginning when this was happening. And here you can also see 3 billion in humanitarian aid assistance for Ukraine from EU and its member states, and so on. So here are some of the statistics which actually go to support the area of where a lot of the NGOs have been playing a key and major role in supporting what has been taking place in this region. We will be looking at some key examples here. This challenge is a continuing challenge, right? The environmental issues are growing concern in the Visegrad region. Air pollution, water scarcity pose significant threats to public health and ecosystems. NGOs are playing a vital role here in addressing these challenges by raising awareness, advocating for policy changes, and implementing sustainable solutions. One such organization is Climate Action Network Europe. This NGO is, some of you might know this, it is particularly involved in the delivery of climate emergency packages to ramp up the achievement of the 2013 goals, which the target, which continuously seems to be moving, and so on. So this particular NGO is playing a continuous role in the whole area. So I think that this area of environmental issues, which is a growing concern, is ongoing. It's not something that has occurred and NGOs have reacted to, like the Ukrainian war. However, this is ongoing. So its intensity is a kind of thing that is going on in the background, right? And NGOs are involved here to play a crucial role in raising awareness, advocating policy changes, and so on. Again, as I mentioned in the previous slide, here some governments may view these environmental NGOs as obstacles to economic development. So there is a kind of mismatch here between policy at the government level and at the national level and the social levels. So any strategies I think that NGOs may implement, particularly for environmental challenges, need to take this into mind, that there could be a mismatch on how these NGOs are viewed by governments. They might be viewed as stopping an obstacle to economic development. Okay. What I would like to, we looked at, I posed a question earlier on this challenge about funding. And the other question I would like to pose before we go on to kind of the next subsection of this presentation is what is the impact of crisis on NGOs? So how do these crises, which we have just explored briefly, what impact do they have on NGOs? What I would like to ask is, are there any present here today, or could you feedback and tell us if you have experienced any disharmony, for example, in the region where you are operating from the government? In other words, have governments in your region, for example, acted like I've viewed here, or viewed your NGO or some NGOs you know as obstacles to economic development or hindrances to social harmony and so on? Have you found that or experienced that yourself?
Well,
Maybe
one thing comes to my mind. We recently had a change of the government, and with that, representatives of the national government on the local level in our region. And so the new voivoda, the head of the voivodeship, changed the strategic approach to financing refugee initiatives, refugees help initiatives, from helping with psychological trauma, helping with securing jobs, housing, schooling for children, to only providing food and basic necessities. So for a lot of NGOs who for the last 2 years were concentrating on offering different services, they suddenly lost the source of financing for their actions. Today I'm talking from Grudziądz again, where the actions directed for the refugees were very limited and still are limited. We are initiating one, but earlier today I was at the meeting of the Mapuj Pomoc, which is the map the services, map the help, which is it's a national platform gathering all the efforts helping refugees in Poland. And they show a data today showing that in March, 66 places and helping points in Poland closed because of the loss of financing or withdrawal of the big international multinational organizations financing those efforts. So this is exactly that, because of the disturbed operations, because of the loss of the financing or different strategic approach to the financing. Those places are closing, and the level of services is being brought down.
Yes, it's quite interesting. Do you think that this is the case because one of the ways that governments are viewing the assistance or the type of assistance that NGOs are providing could be that this assistance tends to create an environment of permanence. In other words, you've got a group coming over into a country, they are looked at as temporary settlers, right? Who will go back, particularly, you know, the Ukrainian refugee communities. And if NGOs are providing services which contribute towards a form of that, it could be viewed as permanent assistance for permanent long-term settlements and so on and so forth. So anything like that is kind of stopped or removed or not funding. Do you think that has a role to play with this?
Well, I think it's multi-factors, actually. Some of that is change of policy, of course, and in our case in Poland, because of the change of the government, the previous one was spending maybe a lot of money without thinking about the fiscal consequences of all of that. So the new government, being more responsible in that term, is obviously trying to streamline and focus the financial efforts to the most directly needed help. And some of that, what you're saying, that some of the migrants, refugees might become over dependent and reliant on that help.
Yes.
That's why I mentioned previously that for NGOs that are providing other services and help than just food and basic necessities, it's a problem, because we tend to help refugees and migrants to become independent from that help. So if we help them to secure the jobs, they will be able to finance themselves rather than reliant on the NGOs. So I think the change of strategies and the policies, in thinking of that, we need to factor that. But yeah, those are from region to region, from country to country. That will be different factors influencing those changes. In our case, I think it's mainly the change of the government, and as well the change of the policies, in which way we can help best with the limited amounts of money that we have.
Thank you so much, Maurits, for this input. It's very valuable. I think, does anybody else have any comments on this area? Okay, so if we look at then the impact of crisis, so crises have a significant impact on NGOs. They disrupt operations, forcing organizations to adapt their work on the fly. Maurits has just actually mentioned how NGOs have had to adapt to changes of government policies due to the government actually changing in the country, and also budget cutbacks have to maybe play a role in this, and they have to then adapt quickly. Resources become strained with funding drying up and supplies becoming scarce. So perhaps the most significant impact is the surge in demand for services having to be cut back, as was just mentioned. So during the crisis, the communities NGOs serve often need their help the most, especially since we are looking at this word, the impact of crisis, right? This is NGO strategies during a crisis. So crisis, the word itself has, connotations of immediate response, right? There's a crisis going on, the house is on fire, so you've got the fire brigade out there immediately, right? They have a process which they follow, which is immediate. So here, I think it's NGOs can face quite a dilemma, because on the one hand, the crisis and the social state of the whole situation requires an immediate response. Yet, resources are strained, funding is drying up, and so on. So there is this strain in decision making. There's strain in strategic implementation of what do you do here, right? So this is, I think, one of the impacts that happens, this pressure on NGOs to act, to meet the crisis with immediate response. Somehow the pressure might lead to not meeting the immediate response that is required fully. And you have to make the best decision for benefiting the most with the least amount of resources. And here I think that if we focus a little bit on what is happening now, in particular, that is touching everyone's lives, the humanitarian crisis here for the war in Ukraine and NGO surge, the war in Ukraine has created a ripple effect across Europe and the Visegrad region, directly impacting influx of refugees at different levels. Millions have fled the war zone here, seeking safety and support in neighboring countries. So the sudden surge in population has placed a significant strain on resources, with the NGOs playing a critical role in alleviating this crisis or carrying out different kinds of actions in different ways. So here are some examples of NGOs' actions in response to a crisis. Providing food water, shelter, and medical aid to refugees arriving at the borders. So this was immediate, as we saw. Setting up temporary accommodation centers and coordinating transportation for onward travel. And NGOs had to use their own funding in the beginning to meet this demand immediately. Social service level offering psychological support and so on. Many NGOs had to coordinate transportation efforts and many other kinds of collaborative efforts. The psychological impact of the war and displacement cannot be overstated here. NGOs are providing crucial support through trauma counseling, mental health services. Additionally, they are assisting refugees with navigating complex legal processes as well within the new areas or new countries. Agnetia, yes, you have your hand up. Please come in.
Yes, sorry, I didn't want to disturb you, interrupt you. I just wanted to wait until you finish, but I just wanted to make a very short remark that a lot of NGOs here that we have on board our project are exactly those organizations that
Yes.
they started their activities or maybe changed the activities to the need that was there, like help to the Ukrainian refugees. So that's just my very short remark, but I think that it is nice to realize that these are the NGOs that have been created quite often as a response to the crisis.
Yes.
And these are our participants.
Thank you so much for that. And it's really great that we have them here, because the talk then becomes much more contextual and rich from the experiences which they have. Thank you. For Martin, you have your hand up too. Please go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to say that, like what our director is saying, that the OPU, an organization for aid to refugees in Prague, was kind of limiting the resources before the crisis started. And now, because of the Ukrainian crisis, we are able to help also other migrants and refugees coming to or through Czech Republic because of the resources we got. So it kept and shifted it as well.
Yeah. So are you saying then that the policy shifted, and now it is taking into account a larger group than before?
Yes, like the Ukrainian refugees, but because of the funding that we got for Ukraine, we are able to maintain the operations even for others or make it broader.
That's great.
I can add here as well that we are in the same position, that thanks to the programs we executed over the last 2 years, we built up resources, the technical resources and the people resources that are enabling us now to apply for the call to create integration center for migrants in our region with cooperation with other NGOs. And this is from the EU funds Asylum Migration Integration Program. So this shows that by emergency action, you can actually, while you respond to the basic needs that are there as it happens, you are building your resources that are helping you to build that resilience and build up skills to help further and beyond the current crisis.
Yes, this is a very important point from the on the area of what we are discussing here today, relating to strategy for NGOs in a crisis. So both Martin and Maurits, you bring important points here that due to the crisis, you had to respond in a particular way, and those processes then started arising, and now over time those processes are being embedded and expansion is taking place. You know, you've got this always a kind of timeline. You have a response to a crisis which is pressurized, and as I was saying, you meet your actions that are required with the least amount of resources, and then you build on that response, and then it's embedded within your organization as a kind of strategy, and then you can build it up and expand on it. So this kind of timeline of events that can take place just because of a crisis response initially, is very, very important. And then along that timeline is also learning. And the experience gained by different people working on different projects, right? And that's valuable. And here I think is where a lot of the NGOs can share their experiences so that others who come in to that same domain or the same response can be a little bit up the ladder already because they have learned from previous people who have tried and tested this. So as this not reinventing the wheel and doing the same mistakes and other things again and again. And I think this sharing and this collaboration is very important from the point of view of utilizing digital technologies like social media, groups, blogs, and also collaborative channels, you see, which effectively. So I think one of these strategic points that I'm making for NGOs to respond to crisis is that this learning experience and knowledge base that is being built up because of this crisis, you know, the refugees from Ukraine, because of this crisis, it's creating a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience. And as a result, I think this knowledge and experience can be shared via different different channels using social media, but effectively. So it would be very interesting to explore how social media channels can effectively be used to disseminate this information and knowledge to other NGOs. I think this is something which can also come about. Martin, you have your hand up. Did you still want to say something?
No, sorry, I just forgot to put it down.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. So let's move on to the next one. So why business strategy matters during a crisis? So why is business strategy so important during a crisis? So as I was saying, think of this as a roadmap, right? As a timeline that guides your organization through certain times where there is uncertainty. A clear strategy helps NGOs make informed decisions when faced with difficult choices. It ensures continuity of operations, allowing NGOs to adapt their work while staying true to their core mission. So as was just mentioned by Maurits and Martin, particularly by Maurits, who was saying that this initial response carried on. So there was continuity of operations, allowing NGOs to adapt. Because there's continuity, then you are adapting your responses to the different needs, requirements that are coming your way. And what happens is this adaptation process becomes embedded, and you can build on this adaptation process to make it better, right? And then adapt it further to different situations, like Martin was just mentioning too. So most importantly, a strong business strategy builds organizational resilience. By planning ahead, NGOs are better positioned to weather the storm and emerge stronger than before, and in fact apply their strategic learning to different areas. What are the challenges and opportunities for NGOs in doing this, in developing these strategic routes, right? These roadmaps? NGOs do face several challenges in responding to the crisis. We've kind of briefly brought this out in our discussions, like the first one, resource strain. The sheer number of refugees that has strained resources with a constant need for funding, volunteers, and supplies. Effective response also requires strong coordination among different actors, including government agencies, international organizations, and other NGOs. Looking ahead, NGOs need to develop long-term strategies to support refugees beyond immediate needs, like was just mentioned by Martin, focusing on integration, rebuilding their lives in host countries. So you've got resource strain, coordination needs, long-term planning, and also dependency risk. You know, Maurits was saying that the strategy of NGOs is to provide support for these refugees so they become sustainable in meeting their own needs, right, in a new environment. So this challenge of reducing dependency risk, right, refugees becoming dependent on the assistance provided by NGOs in the long run, this is a challenge and is an opportunity too. So here NGOs can actually build certain strategies to stop this from happening. Long-term planning, the crisis is likely to continue for some time. NGOs need to develop long-term strategies for supporting refugees beyond the immediate needs. So you can see that you might have one NGO who has reacted to the immediate needs when refugees were crossing the borders, and you had food being provided, clothing being provided, and so on, and all other kinds of psychological and social assistance being provided at the border point when there was the immediate need. And like Agnieszka has said, there are many organizations here on the presentation today who were involved in this. And then there's been a shift to long-term planning. So that short-term has led to finding ways on long-term planning and long-term supporting refugees beyond their immediate needs. So here, I would just like to know, I know that Agnieszka mentioned earlier on that there are quite a number of people here today who are in this arena of what we are talking about. Have there been any organizations who were in the front line meeting the immediate needs of the refugees coming over due to the war in Ukraine, and now have also adapted their responses to a long-term planning? Are there any organizations here present?
Me again.
Maurits, yes, I thought, yeah. Could you?
Yes,
explain to
exactly.
me?
Yes, because we started up, we started our efforts thanks to the innovation we started doing in Torun, in our region, and we were in that innovation which is still being developed in the Google Org Impact Challenge, which is an international program directed for the Eastern and Central Europe. We were focusing on helping people with from disadvantaged groups in securing stable and secure jobs, employment, and housing. So when the war escalated at the beginning of March to our agency, citizens of Torun, our city, started coming with refugees and asking us to help them to find a job and apartments. So that's why we started this directed efforts and service for the refugees with help of Irina, who we had in the team beforehand. And over the time, we were able to build up those technical resources, but the human resources as well, and the partnerships with other organizations that had experience working with migrants, and as well the organizations that were established from migrants coming from Ukraine. So now having this over 2 years now experience and executing projects from Visegrad Fund, from the Active Citizens Fund, from Wspieramy Ukrainę, which is supporting Ukraine program. At the moment, we're doing the HERE Fund, which is funded by Ashoka and Google Org. So we gained that experience executing help on the many levels, from helping with job and apartments to psychological help, integration workshops, and other help. This is part of the innovation. We integrated that help in our innovation model, which we want to scale up, and the scaling up is actually happening because we moved operation from Toruń, where we are based, to Grudziądz, where I am at the moment. We are starting project directed to migrants. And at the same time, what I said at the beginning of our call, that we, with integration center in Prague, we want to apply to the Visegrad Fund to scale up our model and bring that good example of how we can do that and how we how we can cooperate within our ecosystem to the Czech Republic and to the Slovakia, to the integration centers that want to expand their services and help. So this is what helped us as well to develop the model, which we started several years before the war. But actually, when I think back, that model, because it's focusing on the basic needs of every human being, which is the job and employment, it really doesn't matter if it's a refugee or a person with from disadvantaged background, or person with a disability, or from revitalized part of the city where there's no services. So I think that's the success of our innovation, that we are just by focusing on the basic needs and widening our ecosystem and cooperation between institutions and NGOs, we are being able to scale up this model and to integrate it into other regions and societies.
Yes, great. And okay, may I ask you, Maurits, what kind of challenges have you found along the way? You mentioned resource, and you mentioned challenges from the point of, very briefly, challenges about HR, recruiting people of the right capabilities and so on. Can I ask what kind of challenges you experienced, maybe just a few, and how you overcame them?
Well, if I may, the biggest challenge I found is that because it's an innovative way of thinking, sometimes we are we have to overcome the obstacles on the institutional level, and because of the lack of migration and integration policy on the national level in Poland, the people at the offices of the institutions, because of they have the strict procedures that they need to follow, they don't have this innovative way of thinking or this flexibility that we as NGOs very often have, and we have this freedom sometimes to project and execute innovative way of doing stuff. In the institutions, they don't have that flexibility, and this is not helping in the facing the challenges or facing the crises that are new for us. So I think that for us, this is the biggest obstacle. We are doing a good work for over 2 years now, and on the institutional level, we are still meeting the barriers that we have to overcome by just talking and explaining. Just last week, we've been at the unemployment office, where we were highlighting other issues, not directly involved with the people with refugees, but people with disability. So it's that advocacy and the lobbying that we have to do on the way implementing innovations. This is a challenge that is putting strains on the team, because not everyone is good at advocacy, not everyone is good at lobbying. You need to learn those skills. You need to train in that as well. So this is adding another time pressure. This is showing another needs in terms of financing as well. How we can train our people, how we can give them those skills. So those are the challenges that I think are the biggest for us at the moment, because we have the infrastructure, we have the people. Sometimes there's just lack of will, and sometimes there are just institutional barriers that are not helping.
I see. And did you find that from the point of view of training, that you were at a loss when looking for, say, training organizations? You mentioned lobbying, for example. I do not know if there are any specialized training organizations training people on the skills of lobbying. Did you have to do your training in-house?
Last year there was this legislation center in the parliament. They had the project of training NGOs in the legislative procedures, and there was a bit of about the lobbying. Active Citizens Funds, they're doing workshops and study visits that are touching on the advocacy. So wherever I can see that somebody is offering free training or a study visit or a course on those two issues, I'm trying to apply and enter that if I have time. But again, if I have time, that's the issue as well. Doing the work, coordinating 7 projects at the moment, it's hard to find time or delegate other people to be part of that training. Crucial one from the perspective of developing our model, developing our team, and gaining new experiences.
Yeah.
Marcin,
And
thank you for finding time to join our project.
Yes,
We are very
indeed.
happy to have you with us.
I'm happy
Indeed.
too.
Yes, and also from the point of view of sharing your experiences in all these challenges that you have found. Has anyone else discovered these challenges from moving to what we are just looking at here is moving from the immediate responses in the front line when crises are taking place to then over developing long-term core competencies like Stefano mentioned earlier on over time? Has anybody found that this has caused unique challenges? Maurits has mentioned about training regarding lobbying, also time from that point perspective, and over time, over a couple of years now, they have managed to develop and embed these long-term plans. Is there anybody else who has found certain challenges that they would like to share? Because we have people here who have been in the front line supporting. Ivana, yes, please.
Hello, I can share our experience from Ukraine because now I'm in Poland. But in Ukraine, our organization, Right to Protection, is one of the biggest human rights organization. And now we are working on our strategy for 5 years. And it's for us, the biggest challenge in Ukraine is really understanding of our team. Yes, when we are speaking that we have to transform and not to be just that organization who provide some activities on this help in this moment. Yes, for this durable solution. Everybody just talking how we can transform it because we don't know what will be tomorrow. We see what is going on in Kharkiv, for example, yes, and there we have to have this immediate response. And for us, it's a challenge how to combine different types of response in one organization, even in one, because we have different direction in organization, for example, legal aid, social care aid, MH PSS services or cash services. And we have to combine in every direction this different types of help. Yes, and it's very hard to explain and maybe to understand deeply what our programs and direction have to do and how really just to combine all of this.
Yes, that's a very important point being made. With one organization meeting responses at different levels and different time constraints and of different immediacy. So, you know, and how have you managed this, can I ask?
We are in process of managing of it.
Yes.
Really, it mostly it depends on our projects, yes, but I can say that our donors knows us very good because we work for more than 10 years with some of them. And sometimes when we say that we have to make changes in our projects, they say, okay, we understand. For example, we have such situation with Kherson. And they told us, you can buy everything you need, yes, and to create these mobile teams and go there. And after this, we will think about our agreement and everything else. Another donor said that, no, we have a project, we have to think about, yes, annexes or something like this about changes. But for us, it's a big process and we are in it while we are thinking how to combine it.
Yes, this is a really, really challenging ground for development of the topic we are looking at here, strategy in terms of crisis, right? So one can almost start to think, okay, there is no strategy. You try to, because there is no one blanket strategy that you can apply here, right? You try your efforts from the point of view of the main idea in your mind being that we are here to help humanity, right? So like Maurits was mentioning earlier, we are on the forefronts of the basic needs of humanity, you know? And from that driving force, if then you can develop from that kind of slogan, then you can develop response and strategy at different levels, at different times, and different responses, and also with different kinds of suppliers, right? Here from donors that you were mentioning. Some are challenging, some are not so challenging, some are understanding. With some, you have built a trustworthy relationship over time. With others, they are new, right? They don't know, they have their own protocols, their own demands, and so on. So in this sense, I think we could almost say that the strategy has to be very, very fluid, very adaptive, and has to be created not in one blanket form, but be able to be flexible and scaling up. So here you can see on this slide, so despite all the heroic efforts, NGOs have faced several challenges in responding to this crisis, right? Like we were just talking about, the sheer number of refugees have played a strain on resources. And also from this perspective, you've got with constant need for funding and volunteering and so on. So when we are looking at the different kinds of business strategies for NGOs, we can say that you can have areas of scaling up operations and delivering these resources that are required immediately or over time. So we've looked at, for example, some of these ones that were just mentioned in our discussion, where the immediate needs of people, then you have the long-term needs of people. So here you go to adapt the service delivery. Yeah. You mentioned donors. Donors are part of this service delivery. Some donors might be understanding. You have trustworthy relationships with them, and some don't have this. They require their own. So adapting service delivery, adapting to these needs of people, and just moving on, right? Moving on, because the driver behind your actions are this key slogan: we are here for humanitarian reasons, right? So they are not easy. Nobody has said that assisting humanity in times of need is easy and smooth, right? So taking that proviso into account, right, you move on, right? You adapt, you scale up, you scale down, build resilience. And this requires, I think, from the point of view of human nature, training. Because, we are not born with resilience. We are not born with this strength to cope with challenges every day. it requires resilience. And the resilience, I think, doesn't just arise naturally. This, I believe, that it requires training. And I think here somehow one of the strategies that I think probably NGOs could consider is this resilience training from, I would almost even say from the forces, you know, when they are in a mission where they have to adapt very quickly, because in a way you are like that, right? You know, you're not fighting on the forefront with guns and war, but you are fighting for providing resources at different levels. So the kind of resilience training that would be very useful from the point of view of strategic planning for the future is training from adopted from the you know, the special forces or something like that, right? Resilient training mentally, and also from the point of view of adapting and scaling up and down, meeting different demands at different points fast. So this, I think, if there are any training, can I ask if in the audience there are any training organizations that are specifically geared for providing training for NGOs from the point of view of resilience and adaptation of delivery? Okay, it's a huge gap. Exactly. And I think Maurits would say that you've been doing it yourself. Right?
Not quite. No, we are executing since August 2022 a program, training program for NGOs in our region. At this stage, over 140 people access this program from over 70 organizations. We are hoping to continue that from in a different program until the end of the year. But yes, in that program, we entered as well organizations that directly helping refugees from Ukraine, and organizations that were established by refugees from Ukraine. And within that program, we are training in 3 modules, which is managing organization, managing projects and marketing, operation, and administration and accountancy. So in those 3 modules, we are trying to train NGOs and people working for NGOs and prepare them for the challenges. The program was developed in end of 21 after the COVID and after the reports that were done on NGOs in our region and in Poland. During the COVID, we as a social enterprise experienced a lot of issues and a lot of problems with resources, with financing. As a social enterprise, we were closed by the government because of the COVID. So we have to diversify our services. So in 2020, we started doing more social projects. This was one of our diversification process. So after that, over 2-year experience and having previous experience working for business and managing business, we developed this program to basically share that knowledge and on our experience prepare other NGOs for the crisis situations that might happen in the past to basically help their team to gain the basic skills and basic skills to help them protect themselves and build that resilience.
That's excellent. That's so you started that as a service in addition to all the other long-term development services.
And as we speak, in the room next to me, our CEO is actually doing advising a local NGO how they can operate and do their.
That's excellent. I think present here today in the audience is one organization which has been doing this specific training for NGOs. Can I just ask a question which I find interesting? Is the areas that you just mentioned about the training of you mentioned accounting, you mentioned lobbying earlier on. you mentioned how to run an NGO and so on. These areas of modules, you mentioned 3 modules, which you're using for training. The content and were these modules developed specifically after doing some kind of market research between NGOs? What was the most required? Yes.
The project is directed to NGOs in our region, in our voivodeship, and in 2019 we were doing test project in our local in our city on 13 organizations, and at the same time one organization that is executing training projects for many years in our region, they did reports on condition of NGOs in our region. And they gather a lot of data on, and they show that data, and based on that, we were able to program to prepare that response to the needs of the NGOs, and at the same time, Klon Association, which is the national kind of organization doing a lot of gathering data and doing a lot of research on NGOs in Poland. They had a report on condition of NGOs as well during the COVID and after the COVID. So based on those 2 reports and our own tests in our local environment, we program response to that, having those 3 modules, 15 workshops. And between that, we are organizing networking meetings as well with NGOs. So we had 6 already in 2 years. We are preparing our final one in June, which I invite you all, 18th of June. If you can come to Torun, please do. We will be focusing on social responsibility of NGOs and business. This is in terms of the CSR and ESG reporting and all of that, incorporating NGOs with local businesses. So yeah, the program was developed strictly and directly in the response of our local NGOs and the issues that were highlighted in the local and national reports, and issues that we could see having our own experience working with other NGOs in our region.
That's very, very useful. Very useful. I'm assuming that in these modules you are also integrating. You mentioned marketing, so there are digital strategies there for promoting.
Yes,
NGOs, right?
This week group 5 and 6. They had a workshop about communication in internet. Why we have to do that, how to do it, to on one hand to attract our beneficiaries and help them, but attract as well the granting operation and attract those financing for our operation, and as well build the brand and build the recognition in your environment.
Yeah.
So yeah, we were thinking about that as well, and that is linked with the advocacy and that lobbying. Once you build that brand, then it's easier to do the advocacy because you have a bigger leverage. So yeah, we thought about that. Yes.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much for the input. So here you can see that I'm talking a little bit about scaling up operations, adapting service delivery, building resilience for a long-term, and digital strategies, which are some of the areas which Maurits has mentioned are being delivered from point of view of training. I mean, to get these strategies in place and to respond to a crisis situation, we have identified that training is essential. And so even Ivana mentioned the challenges that they were finding. So when you have properly trained people responding to these needs, you can trust these people to get on with their own tasks, right? So therefore, from scaling up operations could involve rapid mobilizations, NGOs, for example, quickly mobilizing volunteers and staff to respond to influx of refugees at the border. So this is immediate response to crisis. How to do this, what to do, how to coordinate the events, And training here would probably not just involve sitting in a classroom and like we are doing, for example, watching my presentation and looking at links, but actually maybe role play even, right? You know, from the point of view of teaching how to do rapid mobilization, one could engage in role play and provide scenarios where groups of people who have come to the training actually need to do this, right? So I'm just mentioning some of the techniques that can be utilized to deliver these trainings. Partnerships, collaborations with NGO, government agencies, and international organizations, allowing for more coordinated response, and how to develop these partnerships, how to look for these partnerships, what are the questions to ask, and how to minimize risk between partnership collaboration. Resource acquisition, NGOs launched fundraising campaigns, sought donations for essential supplies to meet growing needs of refugees. Ivana mentioned donors and the challenges there, so of acquiring resources, how to do this, what happens when these resources don't arrive or are not delivered on time, or are very difficult to find. What are the alternative strategies there? Coordination and collaboration. So the effective coordination process achieved with collective collaborative efforts. How do you develop communication between, to achieve coordination and collaboration, communication is essential, right? So here, from the point of view of communication, what communication channels need to be developed? The coordination and collaboration runs all the way through the above 3 bullet points. Resource acquisition is a process, supply chains. Partnership developing is also a process between buyers and suppliers. In this case, you have suppliers, but you don't have buyers, okay? You are delivering an aid. Rapid mobilization is a process. So how does coordination and collaboration engage in all these first 3 bullet points, right? What are the processes to develop? And I'm sure that what Maurits mentioned earlier about the training that they are doing, this can be built in in different ways, right? I think that there is a lot of room for developing training relating to rapid mobilization, developing and building partnerships, how to get effective resource acquisition, of building effective supply chains, and so on. I think there's a lot of room for training in these areas for NGOs. I think that we are facing crisis situations, and there has been a need to train people in this over time. NGOs have realized this. However, I think the response to having effective training organizations coming into play to meet these needs of NGOs, I don't think has exists. So do you think that I'm right in saying this, Maurits? Do you, for example, have a lot of competition in your field for NGO training?
What competition? Of course, we are the best in our region. No, of course, there's a lot of competition, but I think that once you show how you do things, and when you have a good response, you know, we finished recruitation to our program, but even today I received a call from representative of the president of our city if we are still receiving, if we can still, if she can send people to us from NGOs to that program. So I think this is the best review that we can get, that actually people are recommending our program and people want to join even after it started, and we are in the middle of the last session of that program, and we still have people wanting to train with us. And thanks to actually that work that we did over the last 2 years, the local government on the region level, we won a competition as a training organization. So we are starting later this month communication and promotion of another session of trainings and consultations for NGOs.
Yeah. Agnieszka, yes, please, you have your hand up.
Yes, I just wanted to say, Bruce, that I'm very grateful because you gave us a lot of food for thought. So I was thinking that maybe now it would be good to have some time to reflect, maybe 15 minutes to reflect about what you have said, or maybe just drink tea or coffee. And thank you very much, Mariusz and Ivana, for taking part in our discussion, because it is always better to dialogue than to monologue. So thank you for being active. And I suggest, Bruce, if you don't have anything against that, that we should meet in 15 minutes. Let's listen to the second part of your presentation.
Thank you so much. Yes, so welcome back. So we were looking at these different business strategies for NGOs. The example I'm taking as a crisis is the Ukrainian war. And since a lot of you are present here, relating to your activities on that front. And we just briefly look at each one of these, scaling up operations. So we've got here rapid mobilization, developing partnerships, resource acquisition, and coordination and collaboration being present in each one of the above three, as we were discussing before. So you've got here also some examples of humanitarian partners present in countries neighboring Ukraine, which played a role. And now today I have learned that there are far more as well, some very interesting ones, like Maurits was mentioning as well, which we can go here. So these are links. When you receive the copy, you can go there and you can check what they're actually doing and what they've done. So adapting service delivery, here, for example, shifting focus, many of the organizations shifted their focus when delivering their services. The war necessitated this shift in focus for many NGOs while continuing their core work. When possible, they prioritized providing emergency relief and essential services to refugees. Technology played a crucial role here, I think, in this adaptation. NGOs increasingly utilized online platforms for communication, fundraising, and even service delivery. We've got, for example, remote language courses and online mental health consultations being done by professionals. They could be offered to refugees who may not be able to access in-person services. Also, I was personally involved in delivering online education to Ukrainian students whilst they were still in Ukraine. I was part of a volunteer service, and I'm still doing that with an NGO that was set up by teachers who fled Ukraine, right? And I'm offering my services as a teacher there for secondary school education for students, so that they can continue interesting areas and topics on education. So this is online platforms taking off. For me, that wasn't much of a challenge because during COVID time, we had to develop a lot of resources for delivery of education online. So even though they were for master's and bachelor's courses, however, my background is also in secondary school from the subject area of mathematics. So, this continuing education provision was provided online. So I'm offering mathematics courses to Ukrainian students online and still doing that. So this is run by an NGO. So these kind of NGOs recognize the importance of many of these areas, and also from the point of view of cultural sensitivity. that needs to be brought in to the training of individuals that are going to be working on the front line with these people, particularly children as well, and secondary school children for continuing education online. We had translated materials and offered support services in Ukrainian also to offer effective communication and accessibility for refugees. So I think that digital solutions has played an increasing role, and really, I think to some extent it has helped quite a bit from the point of view of delivery of services. I know some people have been offering mental health consultations online to teenagers and so on. So this area is quite, I think, adapting the service delivery to specific needs and requirements is an important point. One question I would like to ask here is from the point of view of cultural sensitive services, NGOs adapting their services to cultural sensitivity of different cultures. Have you found, I'd like to ask a question here, have you found that a necessity, and has any NGOs or individuals working with the NGO, have you done this in a particular way, or do you have a kind of strategy built into your processes and operations where you adapt your service and take care of this cultural sensitivity differences? Maybe not from the immediate crisis response, maybe in the long run. Although I would say that from a cultural perspective, the region, the neighboring countries of Ukraine, I think this has been very good in the sense that the cultural challenges are not unsurmountable. There are a lot of cultural overlaps there. But working with maybe other refugees or kinds of refugees, do you find that you need to, for example, bring in certain kinds of training for your employees? I can see Ivana. Yes, Martin?
Yeah, okay, so the thing is, it's also connected to the topic we discussed previously, that after the switch from crisis management to kind of long-term goal, I got a position of production and culture manager, sort of, in our organization to kind of ease up the relationships and tensions in the society through art and cultural activities to bring forward the culture of Ukraine, which is kind of connected to Czech as well. Like we are kind of close in the perspective of culture here. And I think and also for the future, I have this position in our organization, and I think art and cultural activities can bring. I know that there's a question of funding to these type of activities. The culture itself is not funded greatly in crisis, and the culture and migrant issues and non-profit issues together is kind of a mixture of a challenge, I would say. But we are getting pretty nice results, even attracting more audience to the projects and to the NGO, to the OPU. We have some projects connected to youth, like through photography and showing the life in Czech Republic through the eyes of young people from Ukraine and elsewhere as well. And I think it can bring attention to marketing and social media, etc., etc. We have this concept of market that's gonna be like every year a platform where you can meet with different types of cultures and have some kind of workshops and exhibition together with it. I don't know if I responded correctly, but this is the way.
Yes. No, I think Yes, I was just going to say that I think that is interesting to note, you mentioning about different kinds of activities that are taking place, right? About the photography project and so on and so forth, to promote the diversity of cultural sensitivity into these processes.
Exactly,
And
because the part of the hybrid war kind of that we are in is also a psychological war and disinformation processes. And I think that through culture and some events that will reach out to wider population, we can
yes,
mitigate these processes and fight it back somehow.
yes, definitely. And I think that what you mentioned just now about this hybrid kind of war where disinformation and social media manipulation in particular ways to meet certain kinds of disastrous needs from my perspective. I think we talked about this in a couple of weeks back, a couple of presentations back. One of the presenters, one of the topics I think was this disinformation and so on, how NGOs were dealing with that. And I think that is an important strategy for NGOs to surmount this, to overcome this somehow, and to build strategies into their long-term plans. Because in the short-term crisis management area, you know, you have to just deal with it, as they say. But Ivana, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I can say that we didn't need even such any trainings because, for example, in this office in Poland, we work with Ukrainians. So Ukrainians are our beneficiaries, and the employees in our organization are Ukrainians. So they understand each other. But for now, we are thinking about different projects on mediation between Ukrainians and Polish people here in Poland. Yes, and maybe when we have such projects, we will need some trainings for this cultural difference.
Yes, yes, I understand. I think this is, like I said, it's a long-term thing, isn't it? It is part of the long-term strategy, like you mentioned, because of the immediate response point of view, you just cope because you don't have time to think about this. Yes. Martin, you have your hand up?
Yeah, also I forgot to mention that our organization employs these cross-cultural employees, workers that are kind of trained in both directions. Mostly it's people that are living in Czech Republic for some time, foreigners that can navigate newcomers along and build this dialogue between the new ones and the
Yes,
locals.
definitely. Yeah. Yeah, this can be built in as part of the engagement of long term, definitely. So going on to the third point, building resilience for the long term. So here, sustainability planning, I think, while addressing immediate needs, this involved in advocating for government policies. We mentioned Maurits talking about advocacy earlier on, that facilitate access to education, employment, and healthcare for refugees. Additionally, NGOs have recognized the importance of building local capacity. Ivana just mentioned that they have particularly been. Sorry, Martin, is your hand is still up? Is that just from before, or do you have a question? Okay, thank you so much. Okay. The NGOs recognize the importance of building local capacity, local training from the point of view of recruiting Ukrainians to help Ukrainians, right? That bypasses to some extent that cultural element. But in the long run, then building a local capacity, investing in training and strengthening local organizations, aiming to ensure sustainable support for refugees beyond the initial crisis response in the long run. My colleague Stefano's talk, next one, actually is going to be focusing more on this kind of long-term strategic viewpoint rather than short-term response for a crisis. Digital strategies here in action that can come about also are important. So we can have here utilizing, for example, online donation platforms. Many NGOs have established dedicated web pages for donation platforms and so on here, which contribute to that challenge we were mentioning in the beginning, when there's immediate need for funding, yet the long-term funding from, say, EU or grants comes later on. But you need that immediate funding to respond for resource allocation, for buying in, engaging with donors and so on. So many NGOs have established dedicated web pages where individuals globally can donate funds quickly and easily and fast. I think digital technologies have helped in this. So these platforms integrate secure payment gateways, ensuring safety and reliability of transactions, furthermore offering a variety of payment options as well, such as cards, digital wallets, even cryptocurrencies, allowing for greater accessibility, and it caters to a wider donor base here, giving more opportunities for funding in different ways. Can I ask here a question, whether any of the NGOs utilized this online donation pages being donations in different ways from individuals to fund that initial response to the crisis when it was just starting, when people were coming out?
Yeah, I don't want to be the only one speaking, but at the beginning, I have a good story to share. That at the beginning of the crisis, one of the Czech billionaires approached our organization, and he supported one project that we had, a hotel for refugees in the center of Prague. There were like 1,000 refugees going through that hotel, and he supported it for like a year period by himself. So he already knew about the organization, but we also got lots of funds from donors, private and government as well. And we also have a web page that is devoted, like you can find kind of easily where to send money, how, and to make it as easy as possible to reach out to.
Excellent. Thank you for those examples. Irina, yes, please.
Yes, I can share some story, but it not some crisis period. It was before the full-scale invasion in Ukraine. I'm from Ukraine, and I live in not small city, but it's not a center region. And we decided to create a rehabilitation center for our wounded veterans and civilians who was affected by war. And we began to fundraise money from citizens in our city. And it was really great case because the half of this sum was founded by big organization like Pritula Foundation. It's our Ukrainian NGO, big Ukrainian NGO, and one American organization. But the second part, it was a small donation from our citizens. They began from 10 hryvnias. It's less $2, and to maybe $100 or $200 donation, and we can collect the sum to buy these buildings in which we plan doing our rehabilitation center. And now we make some repairs work to create this center, and I hope that the half of this building will be finished to the end of the year. And for us, it's a really great case because people can donate besides the war, besides all the situation from begins to $2, and it was very, very, very excited for us.
That's very interesting. You mentioned here the variety. Here, not only the variety of payment options, which I've mentioned in the slide, but here you have the variety of amounts being offered. So this is a good strategy to build in, rather than having I think the minimum is very important, right? Because, then you have to offer people who are also able to offer in the region where the crisis is actually taking place. They might be donating because they are experiencing the event directly themselves, and they feel and understand the most here. The idea of donation, as you can imagine.
Yeah, it's really great case, unfortunately, for this situation, for this war, but it's really very great how civilian nation awoken really and creating during this crisis, during this war situation and something else, because people began to understand that everyone can influence on this situation, and everyone can change, and any small payments can change the whole situation.
Exactly. So this is the whole point of this humanitarian action that speaks to the person from inside. The amount is the donation should not be actually directed by the amount at all, right? It is the action, and then the person donates. So it's an important strategy to that can be built in here. So here are some web links and much more information on how NGOs were leveraging digital engagement to help Ukrainian refugees during the immediate crisis and also in the long term. The first one is more on long-term combat misinformation and how digital strategies were utilized for that purpose. I think we've come across that one before. I said telemedicine to care for people who are afar, chatbots to direct displaced people to resources, cash transfer for direct aid, providing equitable access to information and support, supply delivery, logistics, and coordination. So these are very interesting examples which you can have a look at. They take you to, for example, this one, it takes you actually to a link where there is more information being provided. Here, just for example, how NGOs leveraging digital engagement to help Ukrainian refugees. And there's an article here talking about more hyperlinks if you want to engage in these exercises and events as well. Further, transparency and building trust, real-time updates. NGOs are utilizing social media here quite effectively. Building trust with donors especially is essential. We noticed, Ivana mentioning that some donors had long-term trustworthy relationships built and some don't. So here I think the strategy to carefully look at your donor base and say almost kind of grade them according to the amount of trust that has been built with the donor is quite a useful exercise. And then the ones that do not have substantial trust, low trust donors would then require action of some kind, much more greater effort in building the relationship of trust. Whereas that if you've got trust already built, you don't need to put so much effort on that one. You approach those first, if possible, and get your resources for the crisis immediately in response to the high trustworthy donors. Whereas the low trustworthy donors, you build different kinds of strategies to approach them. And here it's interesting to discuss, okay, what kind of strategies could you approach a donor with if there is not enough trust, collaborative trust built up already? They are almost like new to you. What kind of strategies can one engage in to develop trust, right? Because you will need to contact them for immediate resources. Yeah. So NGOs are effectively utilizing digital tools to promote transparency and accountability, right? So you can offer transparency and accountability of your actions via social media, websites, or direct meetings with people who are going to be donating, to engage with them so they get to see you rather than just see your website or your web page or just your email. A human-to-human meeting can build much more stronger, trustworthy relationships than social media or having a Zoom call or so, right? So real-time updates through social media, email campaigns, allowing donors to track how their contributions are being used on the ground, giving them access to where you are using their donated material, how it's helping people, and how their contributions are being used, publishing detailed financial reports on their website further demonstrates responsible fund management, because trust from donors is particularly important from the point of view of them, the donors realizing that their donations are being utilized responsibly. Responsible fund management. So here Maurits was mentioning earlier on training taking place on sustainability reporting. So in your sustainability reporting for NGOs, you can utilize a framework that demonstrates the responsible fund management and where the donations are being utilized in your activities. And how you are building trust between your donors. One can engage, and I think for NGOs, you don't need to utilize a formal kind of corporate level sustainability reporting framework, but an NGO sustainability reporting report might have a specific framework focusing on just NGOs. So I think any program or any training that is going to be developed for NGOs relating to sustainability reporting of their activities needs to take this into account. Storytelling and impact measurement. NGOs are employing storytelling and data-driven impact measurements to showcase the human impact of donations. Right? You will see that later on there was relief being offered during a crisis, immediate crisis response from the provision of providing food, the World Kitchen project. And they responded very much, their video was very much employing storytelling about the showcase of the whole storyline was how their donations are having a human impact, right? By allowing donors to see the tangible difference in the contributions they're making. It encourages these donors to form trustworthy relationships with NGOs. So I think that a careful analysis of how to build relationships with their donors and what strategies to use is an important part, I think, of this whole exercise. The impact of these digital strategies can be increased donations. The effective use of digital fundraising strategies has had a tremendous impact. I think people have realized this. Secure and accessible online donation platforms, we're just looking at real-time updates and compelling storytelling, use of social media, videos, website marketing, and so on, transparent reporting, engaging in sustainability reporting, and trying to find the whole focus. One could have a whole presentation actually on NGOs and sustainability reporting, right? And what should be the key focus of this? The idea of, sustainability reporting is to show the responsible activities of NGOs, not only from the environmental responsibility point of view, but also from the point of view of transparency and how to manage donated resources effectively and ethically, and to communicate this to the stakeholders that are involved and that have an interest in NGO activity. Here you can see the case of World Kitchen I was talking about, World Central Kitchen. You might have heard of this. This was an NGO with immediate response to the crisis on the ground. And they are worldwide. Yeah. I find their website very compelling and really does show off their projects. And also from the point of view of these tiles, which has stories, different stories, storytelling of people and so on. I'm not an expert in website design and social media marketing. However, I think that it's very effective, their whole area of how they're utilizing this. And here you will see the video link. You can watch that. It's a short video on the World Central Kitchen Project. It's an NGO that has demonstrated utilize successful digital strategies employed by NGOs during the Ukrainian war. And it's utilized these very effectively actually, to build support. Here is another one. This was a digital campaign, actually, #CookForPeace. World Central Kitchen mobilizes global support. So this was, again, the same NGO, World Central Kitchen, but they utilized this digital campaign, #CookForPeace. And it worked very, very well, very effectively. Yes, Ignatia, I think you have your hand up.
Yes, I only have my hand up because Olga would like to add something about reporting to donors. So maybe we could leave the floor to Olga.
Sure,
well?
please, Olga.
Hello, everybody. Do you hear me?
Yes, we do, very clearly. Good.
Great. So I decided to add because now I'm working for a big humanitarian international organization, and we have sub-grantee as local organization, yes, but we have huge donors as UN and so on. And the point of reporting and building trust is to follow donors' restriction. What kind of people we support. It doesn't matter what kind of picture we present them. We should have calculation. And unfortunately, the biggest problem which we face is to verify a list, for example, of beneficiaries from partners organization, because it is strict criteria whom we can support, who we couldn't. And unfortunately, sometimes we really need to start from beginning that process of checking list, not name, not now, for example, we had case with tax ID. So unfortunately, it's incredibly, how to say, tiring activity. And sometimes we think that, oh, it's better just to come to give people, make them happy, and that's all. No way. we should, how to say, be sure that every beneficiaries has passport, ID, man, female, and so on, so on, so on. 60 plus, people with disabilities, and so on, so on. So it's not romantic story at all. And if there is some small local NGO and they work hardly, extremely hardly, and there is some even small mistake, it creates really big problem for them too in future, because next that who provide some grants for them, they are have you check and have you do this, have you do that. So I think that it's very important to be prepared for such interaction, especially with donors' money. If you collect, I don't know, people donation, maybe it's another story, but with donors' money, it's really big job, big work. So thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Olga, for bringing this very important point. It brings me to thinking how similar donors, responsibility of NGOs towards donors' funds are so much similar to the management of organizations where the managers who are running operations and the board of the organization is responsible for shareholders' funds, right? So here, you have the whole process of internal and external auditing, the framework of accounting, the balance sheet, the profit and loss account, all this publishing these statements and then checking them and so on to ensure all the criteria and control factors have been met. So in a way, it is kind of similar, that we use the word donations and donors. It doesn't reduce the fact that there is money that is being transferred to an organization like an NGO, also non-governmental, but still utilizing that cash for activities and funds. So I think you make a very important point to say that it's not just, okay, that easy picture. Here, I think it is increasingly becoming more and more important for reporting, for the reporting and control and the auditing. Like you mentioned, the due diligence being done and all the processes being done on where is this money going to go to and who is it going to go to. So yes, from the training perspective of people working in this arena of NGOs, of sourcing donors, getting the money in, and then utilizing and allocating these funds, I think these people need to be very carefully trained to ensure that they know how to report the responsible management of donated funds in operations in the NGO. Yeah.
And I just want to add about some COBO forms and so on. So all these tools, this IT technology which we use to collect data, it's also extremely important, because we face such situation, then we collect data through COBO form, and then oops, something happened, no data, or there is half data. And who is guilty for that? Nobody. And maybe that old methods just to make copy or to make copy on your mobile, and then so you should be prepared for any such case which can happen. And there is people share such information that what's happened, because nobody how to say wish some data disappear.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that from this point of view. I think this is becoming more and more important because due diligence, as you mentioned, requires data collection and sensitive data collection. So from the point of view of cybersecurity and so on, what measures have been put into place in NGOs to ensure this doesn't happen? So this is also part of the digital strategies in action being utilized for donor funding responsibility. That's an important point. Thank you for bringing this to the attention of others. And then we have here the next slide. If we go over then to the, I was mentioning, let me just check now. Yes, here we are, yeah. Yeah. So this is the little bit more on the Cook for Peace campaign. This was a marketing campaign, how social media mobilization, virtual fundraising, crowdsourcing information was all integrated together to donate proceeds. So this was more on crowdsourcing, right, rather than funding and donors being from very large organizations, what was just mentioned in the previous conversation. So, and this was the impact. The Cook for Peace hashtag Cook for Peace campaign proved to be a highly successful digital strategy. So if one wants to look at an example of a digital strategy in times of crisis, for a digital campaign, global participation resulted in significant donations that supported the World Kitchen Relief efforts. More importantly, the campaign directly addressed food insecurity by establishing emergency kitchens and delivering hot meals to millions of Ukrainians in need. Additionally, WCK also empowered local communities by partnering with restaurants. They provided sources and training, enabling these establishments to contribute to the relief effort, while also supporting local economies and fostering the sense of self-sufficiency. This partnership with local restaurants and so on was all done digitally by the creation of a mobile phone application. And so this is a very useful case study. I use this one for teaching sometimes. So case study highlights the multifaceted nature of effective digital strategies in crisis response. So the World Kitchen combined social media mobilization and crowdsourcing information to not only raise funds, but also gather crucial data for active resource allocation. It also empowered local communities, right, fostering a kind of collaborative approach and giving the opportunity for local communities to feel that they are engaging in responsible action to a crisis that is happening right at their doorstep. And I think this is important psychologically, to engage in local communities and give them the opportunity to become responsible to respond to these events. And that, I think, to some extent also brings out the humanitarian nature within us, because we engage in times of crisis. In times of crisis, the cultural barriers sometimes are broken down. Yeah, it doesn't matter who you are or what you are almost, there's a oneness of our humanity that comes into action, I think, in the time of immediate crisis, right? So this is, I think, an important example where this was brought in, particularly at that time in the front line. So now we get to a point to discuss the strategic challenges for NGOs. So these can be divided generally into a complex set of 3 resource allocation issues, operational challenges, and sustainability concerns. And if we look at resource allocation issues, so resource strain, as we have discussed before, is a significant challenge for NGOs. The needs of refugees are not static, right? They change, and there are different types of needs. You can also come across what happens later. There's a risk of what is called donor fatigue as the war becomes protracted longer, right? Donors start to ask themselves questions, well, how long do I need to keep on donating? Yeah. You can see that this is starting to happen in the international communities, right? Donors are more inclined to support during a crisis situation, an immediate crisis situation. But if it continues and is protracted, and the need becomes not an immediate crisis, but a longing need in the long term, then donor fatigue sets in. Now, NGOs need to, I think, be aware of this donor fatigue syndrome. What do you do? And you need to plan for this ahead, knowing that it will occur. I would like to just ask amongst the audience, have you experienced with your NGOs from your donors this syndrome of donor fatigue, where they start to kind of question, how long do I need to keep on supporting, and they decline their financial support or reduce it in some way or bring in some other conditions? Something to think about, this one. Shifting needs of refugees also will change resource allocation. Yeah. Over time, and you need to adapt their programs to address these changing needs throughout the crisis, this resource allocation issues. Then we have the area of operational challenges here, security concerns, the war environment generally creates operational challenges for NGOs. Security concerns are paramount, as staff working in Ukraine and neighboring countries have faced potential risks. Supply chain challenges, the sudden influx of refugees necessitated a rapid scaling up of operations, which placed a strain on infrastructure, not only at the local level, but also at the countrywide level. Effective response also required strong coordination amongst various actors. NGOs needed to collaborate effectively. So here you can find that any strategy that needs to be developed for the immediate response to a crisis needs to have these operational challenges in view to ensure that things run as smooth as they can. Sustainability concerns. So here, the urgency of a crisis can lead to short-term focus of immediate relief efforts. So NGOs might feel that their main focus has to be for immediate relief, and therefore neglecting long-term integration plans for refugees. To create a future for them, to create a sustainable future for them, as was mentioned by Maurits. Furthermore, the sustained nature of the crisis can lead to burnout among NGO staff and volunteers. Working at the forefront during a crisis with an NGO is not an easy task at all. You are experiencing humanitarian crisis situations directly, engaging in support and relief activities. And this can lead to burnout of staff. So I think any training for NGOs needs to have this to be also built in, that the crisis can lead to burnout of NGO staff and volunteers. So it's crucial here to implement strategies to support their well-being and prevent burnout. Finally, building the capacity for local organizations is essential for sustainable support beyond the initial NGO response. Empowering local actors, ensuring continued assistance for refugees even after the crisis subsides. So I think from what we have been discussing on challenges and some of you have brought in some very important real-life examples, what are the lessons that have been learned for strategic planning of NGOs in a crisis? So I think the war in Ukraine has served as a crucial crucible for NGOs, very important environment. NGOs have demonstrated resilience, adaptability, and commitment to helping those affected by a crisis. I think culture has a lot of role to play in this, adaptability and collaboration and building a long-term view, because the necessity here is that you are helping human beings, right, which are like other human beings. So by employing effective strategies at different levels, a lot of lessons have been learned. For example, lessons like scaling up operations, rapid mobilization, shifting focus, and digital innovation. We looked at these earlier on, but I think that the crisis has highlighted the power and the need for this. NGOs, for example, have learned the importance of shifting their focus as the crisis has evolved to immediate response to long-term response. We've heard today some NGOs mentioning that the initial response was embedded along a timeline, and then they started building upon this, and now they are engaging in other wider activities in the long run. Yeah. So I think the crisis has allowed this to happen. Yeah. So the crisis demanded also a swift response in the beginning, and how to scale up operations, how to engage with donors, how to keep this engagement and build trustworthy relationships, I think is also allowed to be developed. Also, the areas, I think, of cross-border coordination. No single organization, as you can imagine, can effectively address a crisis of this magnitude alone, right? The importance of collaboration is a key lesson that has been learned, I think. There's been strong coordination amongst NGOs, government agencies, and international organizations. I mean, what we are doing now, this whole Visegrad project, all the presentations that have taken place, including the one today, have been due to strong coordination with other groups and NGOs. All the people that have worked behind this to ensure that this strong coordination is maintained and kept, partnering and ensuring that the presentations that have been delivered provide the necessary knowledge, and they bring collectively the experience and provide other NGOs a platform to exchange ideas and connect with ideas and network with what they want to do and ask questions. So this is, I think, all this cross-sector coordination exercise is part of the collaborative effort in building partnerships and engaging these findings of these presentations that we have done here on this project that we are involved in can be integrated into rapid training and implementation for the future development and learning processes. Then we've talked about shifting from relief, immediate response, to long-term integration. Shifting from relief to long-term integration. The crisis has taught NGOs the importance of this shift, supporting refugees in securing education, finding employment opportunities, and accessing essential services. All these have been, I think, part of the training, long-term training that has arisen as part of that short-term crisis response expanding over time. We have heard today about training opportunities for NGOs. NGOs, which allows NGOs to build capacity, empowering NGOs locally and engaging with advocacy initiatives with governments and so on. So all this, what we have discussed, can be brought in, I think, to a framework which can be utilized. It has presented unprecedented challenges. It has provided opportunities for learning and innovation. The question that I have is, can we kind of categorize this in some way into a framework? What are some management strategic tools that you can employ in strategy development during a crisis? And I think we can utilize what I have been looking at as something called the competing values framework, developed by Robert Quinn and Kimberly Cameron in Minnesota, University of Minnesota. And you can see some of the links here in the competing values framework that I have created in this presentation. This competing values framework is a model, is a framework for strategy, which can be utilized in crisis management. And I think NGOs, when you're doing your training for crisis management, I think it is worth utilizing this framework for response. It has two key elements: differentiation versus integration. So this dimension focuses on how organizations balance internal structure and control with collaboration and external alignment. For example, building a relationship with donors. And flexibility and stability. This dimension focuses on how organizations balance adaptability and change with predictability and efficiency. So there are also two very interesting YouTube videos here that I think you can build in and use this framework for. Let's just take an example. An NGO trying to build collaborative, trustworthy relationships with donors. So you map out your donors, who are on a scale, say, who are already having very good, strong, collaborative, trustworthy relationships with you, and who are kind of in the medium range, and who are in the very low range. So after this kind of spectrum of your donors, you can then start to say, okay, with the ones who are weak in trustworthy relationships, where do I place them from the point of view of this differentiation and integration? What strategies will I develop to collaborate with them and align their external needs with mine? And what are the flexible processes which I have to carry out to do this? So this helps in this competing value framework, therefore, is a very valuable tool for analyzing organizational decision-making. It helps us understand how NGOs can balance different priorities during a crisis. This differentiation versus integration dimension allows focuses on whether NGOs prioritize internal structures and control or collaboration and alignment with external factors. Because sometimes I think that when NGOs are focusing too much on internal structures and control, they tend to lose the journey concerning collaboration and external alignment with donors or external actors. The flexibility versus stability dimension focuses on whether NGOs prioritize adaptability and change over predictability and efficiency. So the examining these two dimensions, one can gain insights into strengths and weaknesses of NGO strategies during the Ukrainian war. So you are analyzing your organization during the crisis point and along the timeline, how your strategies have changed. So from this point, it can help NGOs adopt differentiation strategies to improve their internal efficiencies and also attend to external relations. It also helps standardization. Once you find as an NGO that you have developed certain strategies that work efficiently to attend to certain kind of situations, then you can standardize this process and others can then use it and adapt it to their own needs. So this is rapid scaling up. You can integrate something called skill-based matching. There's a NGO, ihelp.ua, develop platforms that utilized a skill-based matching system, connect volunteers with specific requests for assistance. We talked about psychologists online, for example, helping people who had psychological trauma. So they matched those skills. Also tutors, educators, teachers online, matching certain requirements from students who wanted to keep their education going with the tutors online. So this is integrating this. Once this strategy has been developed, then others can use it, you see. We are now coming towards the end of my presentation, and I have here now a few slides where I think that we can look at areas of improvement when developing long-term strategies. The war in Ukraine has showcased the resourcefulness and I think the adaptability of NGOs by employing a combination of different differentiation and integration strategies, as well as prioritizing flexibility. I think NGOs have played a vital role in supporting those affected by the crisis. However, focusing on long-term integration planning and support, NGOs staff well-being in particular can also strengthen their response to this crisis being protracted out over a period of time. I think that understanding the specific needs of Ukrainian refugees is crucial, and it was crucial for tailoring support effectively. Regular need assessment will help NGOs identify any gaps in services, prioritize their resources, and ensure that their efforts are aligned with the evolving situation. I think it's important to involve local organizations and refugee communities in this process to do this. And also, I think that Ukrainian refugees come from different cultural backgrounds as well, and respecting these differences is essential for providing effective support, even though this cultural difference might not be too far off. This includes offering services in their native languages, being mindful of religious practices, and catering for dietary needs, hiring bilingual staff. I think you all know this. I don't need to kind of bring this about. I think that needs to be built into the strategy. And any other challenges would need to be brought into us to ensure that they are identified clearly. And the NGOs are doing a needs assessment of themselves as well, because, you know, NGOs also have people working in them, and people also have their own needs and so on, which require attending to. So I think that, let me just see where we are now. I think we are coming. Collaboration, yes, also is a key area to look forward to and develop, leveraging digital technologies. Deploy off-the-shelf tried and tested solutions. Do not reinvent the wheel. Look at what others have already done in this arena that you're embarking upon and utilize their models. Share resources, foster communication, exchange information, ask, and find out if there are other NGOs who have already done this kind of thing. So I have got to the end. We have 10 minutes left, and if you have any questions or any comments or any input or feedback, please go ahead. I had a question, I think, in chat saying that will the slides be shared? Yes, I think that Agnieszka can confirm that slides will be shared with participants.
Yes, yes. Actually, we have already shared the slides with the email of yesterday, but we will share it again together with the recording of this webinar. So you will have it once again with the email from our organization.
Concerning the framework I mentioned, competing values framework, if there are any NGOs who are interested in implementing the competing values framework within their organization to reassess and their current strategy and have ideas of developing further strategy in areas they want to expand on in the long run, please let me know. I do not mind to offer my services free to help NGOs in implementing the competing values framework into their organization. It would be a very interesting
That's a great proposal, Bruce.
It would be
sorry,
interesting.
go ahead.
Sorry, yeah, I was just going to say it would be a very interesting case study for me actually to do. So I'm personally interested in this, in assisting NGOs in this direction.
I just wanted to thank you for this proposal. That's very kind of you. Yeah. And also wanted to thank you for this sharing with us your observations, insightful observations and hints and reflections on successful ways of creating like scenarios for NGOs. And I think that in this unstable, difficult times, the lessons that I have for myself is that we do need to be very flexible and creative and ready to react, sometimes thinking out of the box. And I think that somehow you taught us, in a way, you showed us some ways also to think in this direction. So thank you very, very much. I don't know, is there anybody who would like to use this rare possibility? We just have 7 last minutes today. I don't know, to share something, ask a question, to comment, say something on your part, share some your, I don't know, expertise. You're coming from all these countries, from Ukraine, Slovakia, Czech Republic, Poland. It's really great to be able to share something, if just for like a conclusion.
Yes, Olga, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you for the chance. And Bruce, you mentioned this collaboration issue, need assessment, and I just wanted to add, maybe it's important for Ukrainian NGO, or for some who would like to work in, how to say, Ukrainian field, that extremely important is to participate in clusters. Yes, that's it's clusters created by UN, so on. And this is, how to say, communities which are trying to focus on some specific problems, and they present regular reports, some discussions, meetings, and so on. And unfortunately, yes, local NGOs, they can create something unique, but usually when many people gather together, they already know something which you think it's unique. And that's why it's extremely important to follow that, how to say, mainstream groups. Yeah, maybe some creative people could be disappointed of that, but unfortunately, better to know and create something unique.
Do not reinvent the wheel. This is also what Bruce was teaching us today. Do not reinvent the wheel.
And
yes, I think this,
yes, but about that clusters, unfortunately, I already mentioned in that chat that somehow, you know, I made that list today, and I was shocked myself that our organization participated in 31 different clusters, different meetings, working group, and so on. And can you imagine to do something like that for local NGO? How many people you should hire for such activity? So that's a challenge.
Do you think it would be good to share this list with us? I mean,
yeah,
would
just
that be
I can do it. Of course, I can do it just to to inform people that how this market is already we are like in jam already, we're like in traffic. That's really, and also I want to mention one magic word which is very popular now: localization. So international NGO donors, we are trying to teach Ukrainian local NGO how to logistic policies and so on, all possible things. And I provided a few this capacity building assessment, and I have to tell you that I'm sure that local NGO, they function very well. Just maybe there is no 100 pages of policy. Maybe there is only one. You understand? Yes.
I totally agree with you. I think sometimes that is all that is needed, because
one
at the
page.
end, yes, exactly. Because this is what I was talking about earlier, that with these policies and 100-page documents that are bringing in frameworks and policy regulations and processes, what tends to happen is that you get so involved in the internal processes and procedures and forget about what the real work is about, right? Yes, what really needs to be done. And I totally agree with you. The local clusters, right? This localization, you mean local cluster. There is no better experience than the person on whose ground the problem is occurring, right? So they are directly in touch at home, and they have a history behind them. They have a context. They know the people. So I think there is a lot for other NGOs to learn from here. So collaborative exercises, I think first would need to involve the relevant collaboration of already like you said, it's already packed the whole arena of local NGOs is full there. And there's a lot of valuable experience, I think. And this valuable experience, I think it would be a great idea for some framework or some methodology where this valuable experience of the clusters that you mentioned can be effectively shared with others who are not there. Yeah.
Probably this is also a good exercise for everybody of us to make such a list of clusters that we all have, so that to see
Yes.
a list from some higher perspective, from like above. So yes, this is something that maybe we should all think about to do. Thank you very much, Bruce. Thank you very much to all the participants for your active participation. It is really nice to know that really you are dialoguing with us. And I would like to just invite you to our next webinar, which will be held also by our Czech colleagues from Prague City University. I just want to tell you that we need to postpone the term again. It will be in 2 weeks' time. It will be on 24th of April. We will distribute the invitation with the link to the recording. But please bear in mind that, again, it is the term is changed in respect to the first calendar. Dr. Stefano Cavagnetto will be our speaker next time, and he will be talking about economic strategy for NGO. So something, again, very, very useful. Thank you once again, Bruce. It has been a pleasure listening to you, and I'm honored to have you with us here. And well, have a great day. I think we are just 1 minute ahead of time, so good afternoon.
Thank
Goodbye
you so much,
to everybody.
Agnieszka. Thank you so much for inviting me, and I hope that the presentation was useful. And thank you everyone for engaging, from very, very useful comments that added to the presentation today. And wish you all well, and thank you so much for participating. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.